Hello, greetings from the Building Bridges program. I'm Jeremy, and I'm here to introduce to you the financial reporting process and introduction to the template for the progress and final reports. So this video is going to cover 4 basic steps to completing the process of financial reporting. First, we'll talk about what you need to complete the financial report. Next, we'll move on to the Program Fund Financial Report Introduction and Overview. Then we'll move on to completing the financial summary and certification, and we'll end with talking about reviewing, saving, and uploading the report to your grantee portal. So what's needed to complete the financial report? First of all, you need to get your assigned grant agreement, which was sent to you at the time of the grant approval. Within the grantee portal, you'll find the approved project expenses, which is part of your application process. And if this is a final report, you'll also need to look up the previous financial reports, also found there in the grantee portal. And of course, you'll need to have your project accounting and the analysis for the reporting period. All right, so we're going to get into looking at the template for this. And as I mentioned, there's just one template for all reports, whether that's a progress report or a final report. So we're going to go over the template and in general terms, as well as give specific instructions for both progress reports and final reports along the way. We're going to talk about the required identifiers, each of the columns, as well as the rows, and the calculations and formulas. All right, for the required identifiers, you'll see here in the top in the blue, I'm going to zoom in a bit, that in row 1, you'll enter your organization name. And then in row 2, you'll add the full grant term. That's the project start and end date, which will be found in your grant agreement. And the DDFII grant number, that will also be found in your grant agreement. Zooming out a bit so we can see this next section, the gray section. You can see here in B that there's a note here that you're welcome to add lines as necessary to match the original budget submitted, as well as to add lines to reflect additional expenses for to propose for within a progress report or additional expenses that came up that you would like to reflect in your final report. This first column here, A, is going to be about the different sections. There's 4 different sections talking about personnel, non-personnel expenses, indirect costs, and then some overall. And then the column B, or C, excuse me, yes, column B is the budget categories in detail. And column D is the DDFIA approved budget. So that's what you'll look up from the grant portal. And you'll enter the dates here in red. Anytime you see red, that's some place that you'll enter in for the grant period. And then you'll be reporting in column E on the expenditures. If this is a progress report, add in the dates that you're reporting on, whether that's a 6-month, 12-month period, et cetera. Include the months and the dates there. And if it's a final report, you can just put the full grant term there. Column F, the variance, this is the column that will auto-calculate. So you'll not need to fill out anything in this column. If there is a variance between column D, an approved budget, and column E, the actuals, we invite you to scroll down to the budget narrative section, and that's where you'll add in any narrative notes around any variances, proposals for reallocation, or explanation for costs that came up during the grant period that are included in this actuals. Moving to columns G and H, if the project has additional support outside of the Building Bridges grant, you can put in-kind support there in column G and support from other funding sources in column H. Column I will auto-calculate across and to make sure that all of those subtotals and totals pull across the way. Now, if this is a progress report and you have a proposed revision for the next grant period, the upcoming grant period, either based on variances or learning along the way, responses to COVID-19, et cetera, Column J is the place to add in a proposed reallocation. And again, if you update any of the numbers there in the reallocation for J, we just invite you to add any brief explanation and rationale for the updates by row in this budget narrative section here at the bottom. So that's an overview of the columns here. And now we're going to go into the rows. So as I mentioned here, we'll see row 6A, personnel. There's 4 different categories here. Section 1 under personnel is the staff positions. Add any that you had in that original budget. If there have been additional staff added to the project, either midstream or throughout the life of the project, please add those here as well. That will auto-calculate in row 13. Again, that's not a row you'll need to fill out. Section A2, if there are any fringe benefits, please include the percentage amount there and include those numbers there across the row for all salaries. And then row 15 will auto-calculate into the salaries and benefits subtotal. Moving into section B, this is other than personnel services. Again, refer to the approved budget to update any of these specifics. You're also welcome to add any lines to reflect the actuals that have happened once the grant period began. You'll see in row 40 that there will be a subtotal of section B, and then we get into section C, indirect cost if applicable. Again, make sure to check your grant agreement to make sure that indirect costs are indeed included, and if so, if there's a limit on that. Section D will be the grand total. It'll auto-populate that across, and that will be the overview of the expenses. So I mentioned that there are auto formulas and calculations throughout the spreadsheet, both in columns and in rows. For those, if you're adding rows or updating those, always double check to make sure that the calculation has followed any of your additions. For example, if you add a row at between 38 and 39, and you want to just double check by clicking in that auto calculation and checking in the bar above where you can see what the calculation is to make sure that it is indeed capturing all of the rows that you would like included in that. Excel does a pretty good job of keeping this standardized. Sometimes there are some broken links or problems when transferring, downloading, and then of course working on different variations from the desktop to the online version. So just always double check to make sure that those calculations do indeed match everything that you have included in the actuals. All right, let's move on to the third section, which is talking about the financial summary and certification. I'm going to zoom in here. There are 2 different sections here in the summary that you'll need to fill out in D46. You'll see the total DDFI payments to date. Just add that in. And again, if you have questions about that, see your grant agreement. If this is a final report or a multi-year progress report, please include any previous expenditures reported prior to this report. Then that will auto-calculate the total expenditures from this report, plus the amount above, as well as any of the total funds spent to date. That'll be auto-calculated, as well as the DDFI funds remaining. Make sure to double check the math on that to make sure there's been no problems with those formulas. Then we'll move over to the financial report and contact, adding in name, title, email, and phone. And then the certification with the name of the primary contact and inserting their digital signature, as well as the date. Once all of this is complete, you'll just want to go back and review, making sure, as I mentioned, all of the subtotals and totals are correct throughout, making sure that any additions that you've made are being captured and reflected in those subtotals and totals throughout, and to make sure that all columns and rows are complete. If you have any questions, feel free to email us or reach out via Giving Data. Thanks so much.